Nathan Steele always had a criminal history since young age, being a thug in a Chicago mob. He kept climbing the ladder thanks to his great skills, reaching the level of a hitman. But one day, he tried to set up two mob families against each other. Things didn't go as planned, and he was caught guilty in the process. A bounty was placed on Nathan's head by the mob leaders, causing him to leave the city and live under the shadows. He continued his life under the radar, running an underground gun range by day, and fought drug dealers by night, as a means to wipe out drug trade from America. After 10 years, at the age of 40, Nathan wasn't sure if this was the career that he wanted to pursue. That's when he decided to steal a shipment of weapons and start his own criminal crew under the name of Dallas. After a short while, Dallas had his team ready. Ulf, codenamed Wolf, an ex-software developer who lost his company and his family after the economic slump of 2000. James Hawksworth, codenamed Hoxton, a hothead from London who was committing small robberies as a living since young age. And Nicholas, codenamed Chains, an ex-mercenary who also had history in the US military. It is unknown if Nicholas is his real name. But a mercenary crew cannot succeed without a mastermind monitoring every action. That's where Bane comes in place. He's the one running the operations, giving out jobs to the team. His real identity was hidden from everyone, even to his own crew. The only information we are certain is that he used to do these types of jobs himself back in the days. They will call themselves the Payday Gang. The crew succeeded in many heists during the following year, robbing the First World Bank, showing no mercy to whoever tried to backstab them like their getaway driver Matt Roscoe, printing tons of counterfeit money, quietly stealing precious jewel, and even extracting a whole panic room full of cash. All was good, until Hoxton was caught and arrested for his crimes. Somehow the police got a hold of major evidences against him. The crew had to lay low for a while, likely enjoying a vacation with the money they had earned from their heists. That was until Bane will contact them 1 year after Hoxton's arrest, who set them up on a flight to Washington DC. He had plans to bring back the heisting on a massive scale with his brand new website, crime.net. Here Bane will hand over jobs commissioned by himself and in the future, other contractors. But the crew was still missing a fourth member, and Hoxton still had a lot of jail time ahead of himself. Fortunately, Dallas had a younger brother who was in need of money, since he had multiple loan sharks at his throat. He will take the place of Hoxton, and with his newfound crew, they will start bringing some terror in the jewelry stores and street of Washington DC. The news of these crimes spread pretty quickly, getting the attention of contractors outside Bane. The very first was Vlad, a former Ukrainian mob boss who moved to DC many years ago. He had spent 8 years in prison after being sold out by a friend, and now he has lost everything. But he was ready to climb the criminal ladder back up and take revenge on his former friend. Vlad started off by giving some simple tasks, like stealing $50,000 from stores he used to own, which are now in the hands of his rivals, and stealing from the guy who sold him out, Dmitry Volkov, by acquiring his fiancée wedding tiara and stealing money from his safe located inside his own nightclub. Meanwhile, another contractor started handing out jobs, Hector Morales. He was a powerful drug trafficker whose intent was to take down the Mendoza cartel and take their territory. Every contract from him will be related to moving his product or sabotaging the Mendozas. But there was always something strange about his jobs. The police always seemed to be one step ahead of the Payday crew, either by surrounding the meat truck they were traveling in, or by surprising them in the location they were supposed to move the product. Not long after this, a new contractor would reach out to crime.net. US Congressman John Henry Simmons, codenamed the Elephant. He wanted the Payday crew to rig the upcoming election and swing the votes in favor of his own pawn, mayor candidate Bob McKendrick. In exchange, he would use his connection to transfer James Hawksworth, the gang's old mate, to a less secure prison. After the job was done and everyone was waiting for the transfer of their friend, Bane had a difficult task for the gang. He was informed by Gage, a known weapon dealer, that a nearby murky water storage facility was filled with valuable artifacts, weapons, drugs, and other goods confiscated by this shady private military company. Of course, since they weren't dealing with simple cops, they had to stick to the shadows and not get themselves caught. In other words, they had to do this one quietly. And so, With the murky water storage facility emptied, McKendrick as the new mayor, and old Hawks in a lighter security prison, all the crew needed was a plan, and that's when the dentist approached Dallas. He was following every step of the Payday gang and had great things planned for them. He offered a simple deal. They will gather precious items for him, and in return, he will design a plan to break out their former colleague. The first assignment from the dentist had the sole purpose to make him and the crew richer by emptying the vault of the benevolent bank. It proved to be a bigger challenge from what they were used to, but with some pre-planning, everything went smoothly. Right after that job, the dentist had something related to the breakout of their former colleague. The Payday gang was tasked to find and eliminate Grigori Beria, also known as the Commisar, a leader of an organized Russian crime syndicate operating in the DC area. His death would have put pressure on the district attorney, which would have given Hoxton a retrial, locating him near a courthouse, a much easier location than a prison to break him out of. After the death of the Commisar, all the pieces were in place. Now it was time to get into action and finally free Hoxton. Once everything was in position, the gang blasted the concrete corridor wall below the courthouse, retrieved Hoxton, loaded him onto a truck and escaped from the cops. Old Hoxton sure felt content to be out of prison, but was pretty upset about how his old crew didn't break him out earlier, not to mention how they took his codename and replaced him. After the breakout, he gained back this alias with an updated version of his old mask, while new Hoxton just took the name of Houston. But they had no time to celebrate. Hoxton wanted to check if his suspicions were true, if there was someone who had sold him out to the cops. So him and the crew directed themselves to the closest FBI office, and once inside, they proceeded to hack into the Fed's central database in search of anything related to the clown case. They managed to obtain enough information about the guy responsible for selling Hoxton and everyone else within the crew out, someone with ties to both the Feds and to crime.net itself. After Hoxton had gone through all the stolen data, they had finally pinned down the location of where the rat himself was located, in a safe house outside the city. The next goal seemed obvious: find out who was the traitor and get Hoxton his revenge. The crew drove off to the safe house, sneaked past the FBI agents, and reached the panic room where the double agent was hiding. After obtaining the codes needed, they managed to open it, and to their surprise, it was revealed to be none other than Hector. He was the one who gave the evidences to the police about their heists. He was the one who set up the meat truck to be surrounded during the watchdog job. He was the rat who sold them out for his own interests. With his death and the disposing of the evidence inside the safe house, this chapter was closed. Now it was time to meet the dentist's deal. The Payday gang was commissioned to infiltrate the McKendrick Museum of Ancient Arts to obtain a mysterious and priceless diamond. It was no common diamond though. In fact, it was considered to be cursed. Like its history teaches us, whoever held it fell into a spiral of madness and bloodshed in one way or another. Stealing from the museum proved to be a difficult task, but in the end, the heisters managed to obtain whatever they were after. The success of this job caught the attention of a new face. A legend in the drug smuggling business in Europe, calls herself the Butcher. She sent from Croatia her best man, Mr. Zubovic, codenamed Dragon, and a new job for the crew: retrieve a cargo of thermobaric explosive from either a train or a ship in Washington, D.C. Once the Balkan bomb was retrieved, an old friend had a job for us. Vlad had heard about the loot the Payday gang snatched back at the Murky Water storage facility the previous year, and gained information that they just restocked. So he paid up top dollar for the heisters to go back and take as much as possible without the need for a silent approach. Little did the gang know that they were retrieving nukes. These angered Bane, but not enough to pull Vlad's jobs away from crime.net. Regardless, this wouldn't even be his last crazy heist. After some time, the dentist finally commissioned the crew for his final job. They had to travel to Las Vegas to infiltrate the Golden Grin casino and empty the vault. They were allowed to keep a share of the profit, except for one specific item. What it was, the dentist wouldn't say, but it appeared to be a wooden box with a pyramid symbol on it, resembling the Illuminati logo. They had the help from a new member introduced by the dentist himself, Sergei Kozak, codenamed Sokol, famous Russian hockey player by day and bank robber by night, who designed a new drill just for this vault. Him and the crew took the first plane to the City of Lights and executed the plan to empty the casino's vault. Once everything was retrieved, the crew went back to Washington, delivered the mysterious item and closed business with the dentist forever. Or so they thought, but more on that later. During the following months, the Payday gang recruited a new member from the East, Jiro, an ex-member of the Yakuza. He was one of the most talented members of the mob he was in, which gained him the attention and respect of his boss. The Yakuza clan had 3 simple rules: no drugs, no theft, and no indecent acts with the boss's daughter, Yoshimi. Fate decided that Jiro would break the last rule. They both fell in love with each other, and together they had a son, named Kento. Unfortunately, some member of the clan noticed the affair between Jiro and his fiancée, and reported it to the boss. Jiro was shot and left for dead in the middle of a robbery. The shots weren't fatal, and he was rescued by the police. After spending 20 years in prison for his crimes, he set out to find Yoshimi and his son, but to his tragic surprise, she had been killed and his son taken away. On a fit of rage, he blasted his way to his former boss, slaughtering everyone on his path. Before killing him, his old boss revealed how Kento was still alive in America, and the only way to have any information about him was to contact Bane, which led him to join the Payday gang. But before the crew could help out their new friend, they had other troubles in the horizon. Mayor McKendrick was getting hit by harsh criticism for not being able to follow his promises to stop crimes from the city. With the fear of losing his position in the office, he betrayed the Payday gang from his previous deal and contacted an old friend. Commissioner Garret knew that if he wanted to cease crime in Washington, D.C., he had to track down the problem to its roots, which is why he declared war to Bane, publicly threatening that he will catch him and close down crime.net for good. Thankfully, Bane had an insider in the police force, who positioned a device disguised as a bobblehead, capable of remotely hacking his computer, accessing his emails and files. The FBI wasn't the only one after him. Another new face emerged from the shadows: Vernon Locke, a head of Murky Water Cyber Warfare Division, commanded by the company to infiltrate crime.net and shut it down. He managed to hack into it, but once he was in contact with Bane, he had a better proposal: get the Payday gang to work for him, stealing valuable items from Murky Water with his help, and share the profit, or he will follow through with his initial mission. The Payday gang weren't left with too much of a choice, so they started completing works for their new contractor. In exchange, Vernon also offered protection from Murky Water, who was mobilizing their best man to take down the crew for their crimes against them. Locke had immediately 2 jobs for the gang: infiltrate a Murky Water base in Nevada to gain as much loot as possible from their vaults, and hijack a Murky Water airplane transporting bundles of cash, letting them fall from the plane and collecting them once they reached the ground. After all the missions were concluded, Locke promised to stay in contact and transmit any information he would gain from his company regarding the Payday gang. During the following couple of years, the crew completed various jobs from old and new contractors, from taking down a biker gang to steal some new tech, to steal McKendrick's next campaign money from his yacht, and even smuggling live goats filled with drugs. Finally, Locke had some important news for the gang. Someone was out there to destroy them. Someone way more powerful than Garret. It wasn't known who or what it was, neither its motives, but Vernon managed to get a hold to an important detail. He knew the location of an agent of this enemy. The crew immediately intercepted the target and started a crazy chase in the streets of Washington. Once they catched up with him, it was revealed to be Matt, the original Payday gang getaway driver who betrayed them years ago. Before they could decide his fate, he said he had information about Jiro's lost son, Kento. They took him as a prisoner, and after fighting through dozens of cops, they managed to get on a getaway helicopter straight to the safe house. There, they got more information out of him. He wouldn't speak out the name of the one who was after them, but he said that he knew of a Yakuza member named Kazuo, who was currently imprisoned in a Long Island correction facility. The guy had vital information about Kento. The gang started planning with Bane a way to break this guy out, and kept Matt in the trusty hands of Jacket for the time being, a trusted member of the Payday crew. Thanks to Bane's contacts, he started a prison riot where the target was located. That resulted in Kazuo being transferred to a different prison. The plan was simple, break the guy out during the transport. But it wouldn't have been a quiet job. The gang set up explosives on the bridge where the police van was passing by, and detonated them at their first sight. Once they located the right prisoner, they escorted him to a higher position, and extracted him with an aircraft via skyhook. Once back at the safe house, they got some infos from Kazuha, but sadly not much. At least they knew for sure that Kento was still in America, and that he was now working with the local Yakuza. The search wasn't over, it had just begun. Few months after that, Locke commissioned the Payday gang to travel to Alaska inside a train filled with weapons that were part of a trade between Vernon and the Butcher. The heister's job was to supervise the goods and make sure that the deal went smoothly. The whole thing felt suspicious from the beginning to both Bane and the crew, but nonetheless they accepted the job. Once they reached their destination, their suspicions were right. Locke thought that his deal with Bane was due, and set both the gang and the Butcher's men up, having a full police force waiting for them at the dock. Fortunately, the gang managed to liberate the Butcher's men and escape with their ship back to Washington, thanks to the weapons stashed in the train, which proved useful to fight off the great amount of SWAT units. Needless to say, the Payday gang, Bane, and the Butcher were furious at Locke, and were intention to get revenge on that backstabbing snake. Sadly, even after a heavy research from Bane, he couldn't find any info about his current position, but he wasn't ready to give up. Months after, Bane had a new job for the crew. They had to travel to Los Angeles to assist the Cabot crew, Mr. Brown, Mr. Pink, and Mr. Blonde. Their plan was to hit a jewelry store and empty their vaults from the diamonds. Nothing new for the Payday gang. But once again, everything didn't go as planned. Mr. Brown got killed by a sniper rifle in the shop, and the SWAT sent their men like usual. Regardless of the situation, the heisters still followed through with their job, simply not just as planned. After chasing the near shopping area to attract the cops away from Mr. Blonde, the crew manages to escape from the heat. But over the communication, they heard that Bane was in trouble.
Guys, shit. In trouble. Location is compromised. Gotta get you guys out of there. This is what I was afraid of. They're coming for me. I'm so close to finding. Not much time. Don't hear me. This is crazy, but you need to trust Locke. He is our side, and whatever you do, you need to get to Brooklyn. Locke knows. Fuck you. Fuck you. Locke, help you find. Be careful.
For the first time, someone found and captured Bane. The Payday gang had no other choice than listen to his last words and trust Locke like they were told. Vernon showed himself not too long after that, apologizing for his apparent betrayal back in Alaska. According to him, he staged the whole thing with Bane because they found out that people they thought they could be trusted were listening and monitoring every action that they were taking. The reason behind his fake backstab was likely to make them think that Locke will be on their side. It was all a triple agent deal. Nonetheless, he will try to explain to the heisters more once the whole situation in LA was concluded. After another police assault, the gang helped securing the loot from the jewelry with the Cabot gang and went back to Washington. At the safe house, Locke explained that Bane found information so big that even he couldn't handle, which is what got him caught. He promised that he will take his place for the time being, and try his best to find his location and break him out, while trying to understand what Bane uncovered. In the following days, it became clear that Murky Water had something to do with this. Locke had lost all communication with his company. He could still contact some of his closer co-workers, but other than that, he was practically ousted. But thanks to Duke, one of the newer recruits of the gang, Vernon planned their next move. He made him inspect one of Bane's paintings, The View of Mount Vernon, which had some encrypted notes on the back. Those translated to some information about an artifact which was located in the foundation of the vault in the Brooklyn Bank. They had to break in, destroy the floor, and take the unknown artifact before their enemies could get their hands on it. And maybe empty the vault in the process. Once the gang found themselves in the vault, they blew up the floor and opened a box containing a medallion with a peculiar symbol. Whatever it was a key item for something big. A few months later, the news came that the elephant was arrested by the FBI. They took him into custody and confiscated the item in his possession. The heisters learned from Garret's email that the Commissioner was in contact with their unknown enemy, which called itself Kataru. They were the one behind the capture of Bane, and it seemed that they were working with Murky Water. According to the messages, the two struck a deal. The Commissioner would exchange the elephant's loot for Bane, so that he could take the credits for finally ending his crime spree. The heisters had to ruin this deal before it was too late. They managed to sneak in the FBI offices, passing through the security, and after luring Garret outside of his studio, they located the safe. Once it was opened, to their surprise, it was revealed that the elephant's loot was a wooden box, very similar to the one they retrieved for the dentist back at the Golden Grin Casino. The only difference seemed the inscription on the side, which looked like a snake biting his tail. Once in possession of the loot, the crew took off and the deal was in flame. Didn't take long before one of Locke's contacts informed him about two more wooden boxes similar to the elephant's one that were located in Murky Water's biggest facility. There was no way for the Payday gang to get there quietly, so they had to prepare for a huge fight. They were practically declaring war against Murky Water. Once they were in using the old box trick, they had to go through different rooms in the warehouse to obtain the infamous dentist loot and a completely new box. After another excruciating fight, the crew rushed to the escape helicopter at the last moment with the loot. But on the way out, they noticed something peculiar. A man standing behind a bulletproof glass wall, staring at the heisters. Jiro had no second guess at his sight. He was his lost son, Kento. Behind him a monitor, showing a hooded prisoner covered in blood, with a man on the right, standing in the shadows, wearing glasses and a coat. The only one who could have answered to this description seemed to be their old contractor, the dentist, which meant that the prisoner in the footage could be no other than Bane, proving to us that he's still alive. The Payday gang finally had hold to all the boxes and the medallion, which might have had something to do with them. They knew that the dentist was involved in the capture of Bane, but were unclear of his next move. One thing was for sure, no one knew why this Kataru wants to get a hold of these boxes so badly. Are those just some very expensive collector items? Or perhaps they hold some ancient power? Meanwhile, Jiro had some other problems to think about. After his unhappy reunion with his lost son, he fell in a deep silence, ashamed for the choices of his legacy. Could there be any way to get him to join his side? Or if he had no other choice, did he have to kill his only son? Only time could tell.